Greetings, family. This is YUDAHYAH. Today we're going to look at Ezekiel chapter 20, verses 19 through 25. The title of this lesson today is Do Not Profane His Name. So I guess we need to start at looking at just how do we profane His name. We can start by realizing that the Most High has mentioned more than a few times in Scripture that we are called by His name. Now, when you look at that carefully, we know that He calls the nation of Israel, Israel. So when He called His people out of Egypt, He called them by His name. He didn't say, I'm calling out Jacob or Judah. He said, I'm calling out Israel. That was the name that He gave us. Actually, He named us after Him. So it makes sense when you read through the Scripture where He says how much He loved us. He loved us so much He gave His name to us. So when you profane His name, exactly how is that done? Think about it like this. If you work for a company, we'll call this company XYZ, and this company has a uniform with their logo stamped on it, XYZ. How do you think the owner of that company would feel if you came into work one day wearing one of his competitors' uniform? You get my point? This is what it was like for the Most High when He labeled us with His name and we strayed off into another nation wearing His name, defiling it among these heathens that He did not, that He despised. We profaned His name. Yeah, when you walk around in public as an Israelite, you are representing the Most High of Israel. He's labeled you. This is why you are not to mingle with these other nations. So do not profane His name. So let's get started with this lesson. The majority of people today are caught up in the forefathers' errors. What was those errors? Remember, they kept going to the other nations, worshiping their gods while they are wearing the Most High's name. Man, can you imagine that slap in the face? The majority of people today are caught up in the forefathers' errors, which was profaning His name, going into other nations, mingling with these nations that are filthy in the Most High's eyes. And you are supposed to be clean and upright. And here you are standing in the midst of all this filth with the name Israel written all over you. Most teachers teach incorrectly, hitting some good points and missing the mark on others. This is inconsistent. While most believe they are correct and will defend their error to the end, while some welcomes correction by putting aside their pride. We will look at some of those errors today and see what the Holy Creator says. So let's start with the first verse in Ezekiel chapter 20. I am the Lord your God. And what does He say to do? Walk in my commandments, not other nations. Walk in my commandments. What are those commandments? Well, one of the major ones is the keeping of His Sabbath. You cannot keep a day of any appointment if you don't know when it is. You cannot name a day and choose out of your own selfish arrogance and call it the seventh day. You don't have that right. The Most High did it exactly the way he wanted to in Genesis, starting in chapter 1, the creation. He did it exactly the way he wanted. He did not allow or give anybody permission to go and change it. Since he didn't name days, we shouldn't either. And since the days have names to this day, ask yourself, who gave you those names? Where did they come from? There is no scripture, nowhere in the Torah or even in the New Testament, that can justify naming of the days by the Most High. He didn't do it. Now, if the Most High does something a certain way, you should follow it that exact way. You don't add anything to it. You don't subtract anything from it. That's what it means to obey. Don't go adding something to something that you don't even understand. So how can you have a Saturday, seventh day, without a Sunday, first day? And according to Genesis, there was no mention of a Sunday or a Saturday. So again, where did it come from? It came from the Romans, the Catholics. They named those days after their gods. This is what our forefathers did when they made those errors back in their day. And people are still doing it today, and they don't see it. So, verse 19, I am the Lord your God. Walk in my commandments, not other nations, not your own, in my commandments, and keep mine ordinances and do them. That's pretty cut and dry to me. And hallow, let's take a look at this word's definition. To make holy, to consecrate, to set apart, and hallow my Sabbaths. Okay? You have to set these Sabbaths apart. Okay? How can you set a day of Sabbath rest apart if you don't know when that day truly is? And you cannot tell me that you know if you're following Gregorian Friday sundown to Saturday sundown. Again, the days were not named. They were numbered. You can't choose your seventh day. You have to obey him and follow his seventh day. My Sabbath. And hallow my Sabbaths. Set them apart and let them be a sign between me and you. So you see here, if you're not keeping the new moon and its Sabbath, you cannot be correct on the Sabbath days or any of the rest of the feast days. So there is no sign between you and him. Your sign is between you and Lucifer. Because there is nothing in the middle. It's either plus or minus. There is no middle ground. You either going to worship one or you're going to worship the other. It doesn't matter if you never open your mouth. Even if you don't say a word, if you're not keeping the right one, you are definitely going to be accused of keeping the wrong. So this is very important that you first understand the new moon. That is where it all starts. The new moon tells you where every feast day is. That is your map. You cannot go wrong. So, how do you profane his holy Sabbath? By not keeping them, or creating your own seventh day, or walking in your own vain imaginations, calling it the Most High's word, and let them be a sign between me and you, that ye may know that I am the Lord your God. But listen to this. But they provoked me, and their children walked not in my commandments, and they took no heed to mine ordinance to do them. You're probably asking, what exactly does that mean? And where am I going with that? Well, first of all, they provoked him. They provoked him because they refused to obey. They figured they can do a better job. They figured it's okay, we can go over here and mingle with these people as long as we don't stay there. We can go there and then come home in the evening. No, you're guilty by association. That's a real law. We were told not to mingle with them. Our forefathers was told the same thing. They kept breaking that law, and we kept being punished for it. But they provoked me, and their children walked not in my commandments, and they took no heed to mine ordinances to do them, which if a man shall do, he shall even live in them. And they profaned my Sabbaths. Now watch what he does next. Then I said that I would pour out my wrath upon them in the wilderness to accomplish mine anger upon them. But I wrought so that my name might not be at all profane before the Gentiles. And I brought them out in their sight. I lifted up my hand against them in the wilderness, that I would scatter them among the Gentiles and disperse them in the countries, because they kept not mine ordinances and rejected my commandments and profaned my Sabbaths, and their eyes went after the imaginations of their fathers. You are repeating the same thing our forefathers did. This is exactly what they did. This new moon is not new. It was going on back then. And our forefathers decided that the heathens had a better way of celebrating. So they profaned, they rejected the Most High. And they went after their own vain imaginations, or the heathens. Verse 25. So I gave them, y'all, I want y'all to really listen to this. So I, the Most High, gave them commandments. This is going to blow your mind. That were not good. Now, what commandments could that be? And ordinances in which they should not live. Y'all know what this is? This is your New Testament. The Most High allowed this book to be written as a device to be your downfall and punishment. Listen to what it says. I gave them commandments that were not good, and ordinances in which they should not live. If you read the New Testament, there is so many things in that book that is just pure blaspheming and is just downright despicable. For example, eating the flesh of a man, sacrificing a man, and the list goes on. I'm going to read that again. I gave them commandments. I gave them the New Testament that were not good, and ordinances in which they should not live. And I will defile them by their own decrees when I pass through upon everyone that opens the womb, that I might destroy them. So if y'all don't believe that this commandment that he gave them that were not good, can you find any commandment in the law, statutes, and commandments in the Torah that is not good? You can't find one. So what can it be talking about? It could only be the New Testament. It's right here, people. The Most High said it himself. It's right here. I gave you a book that is not good for you because you wouldn't listen to me. That's the same thing he did when he put us in the captivity. He said, you will serve under those whom you cannot speak their language, or a language that you don't understand or your forefathers didn't know. This is the same thing. This is the same exact thing. You wouldn't listen to him, so he put you under people that you wanted to be around so bad and now you're serving them. Is it good for you? No. Nobody likes it. At least not us. Only one likes that crap is the ones that is over it, and that's those heathens. So trust me when I tell you, I gave them commandments that were not good. That's the New Testament. Shalom, family.